Hello there. How you doing? Welcome. Today's a fun one. We're going to go down memory lane and I'm going to talk about the 10 albums that got me into jazz. It's not what you think. There's kind of a general list, a list of like the must-know jazz albums you should listen to. And inevitably, albums like Kind of Blue by Miles Davis, Giant Steps by John Coltrane, might be a Louis Armstrong Hot Fives or Hot Seven album. These are amazing albums. They're classic albums, of course. They're some of the best albums ever made. And they're essential listening. But if you're trying to get into jazz, at least for me, it didn't work that way for me. I grew up as a rock kid. I listened to Van Halen and Rush and Kiss, U2. I still love all of that, but I grew up listening to that music. I didn't come out of the womb listening to A Love Supreme, So I thought it would be a good video to show because if people are learning this music and trying to get into it, there's a thing maybe they think they have to start with these classic albums. But for me, I found my way to those albums, but it was through other gateway albums that were kind of similar to the music that I was currently listening to back in 7th grade. So that's what we're going to do today. And hopefully it'll not only show you some great stuff, but also show you that it's okay. However you come to this music is your journey. You don't have to follow some sort of list. However you come to this music is great. You don't have to start with Kind of Blue. Because to be honest, if I was going to start from, Strutter from Kiss going to all blues on Kind of Blue, that's a very crazy transition. I wouldn't even know what to make of that. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to take you through kind of chronologically. We're going to start basically right around 7th grade. And it's a loose chronological order. So it's not in order of what I like the best. It's an order of through essentially about 7th grade until the end of high school, really. It's going to be loosely chronological, okay? So let's dig in. I hope you dig this, and let's see what happens. Like I said, I grew up listening to rock music, especially Van Halen and Rush. At that time, Rush's music was really keyboard influenced. Power Windows, Hold Your Fire. I just couldn't get enough of keyboards. I just started to learn how to play on a little keyboard, and we would go to the music store and just ogle over these things that we couldn't afford. Just MIDI was booming, music stores were booming. This technology was everywhere at that time. It was a real interesting time for music, it just all over the place. So this first album really was my gateway into jazz. It's Chick Corea Electric Band, Light Years. Released in 1987 on the GRP label. Chick Corea, Frank Mbale, Eric Marienthal, John Patitucci, Dave Weckl, Carlos Rios plays on a little bit of this. And this thing really blew my mind. I'd never heard anything like this before. It had all the technology of keyboards. It had the rock groove like the rock music I listened to, but it was also so much more. It was essentially everything I loved about Rush, on steroids. And I just couldn't get enough of it. Everything about this album, I wore this tape out. I listened to it so much. So let's check out Time Track from Light Years. Chick wrote amazing endings and just amazing compositions. Oh, man. Right? Chick wrote the most incredible endings. Unison lines. I had never heard anything like that before. It just blew my mind. I was literally like, where has this been all my life? The other thing that was cool about this album is Hugh Syme, who is a graphic artist. He did all of Rush's album covers, and he actually did the cover for this album. So I was like, oh, there's a little connection to Rush. Okay, so that was number one. All right, now we're going to get into right around early freshman year in high school. This one is the Jeff Lorber Fusion Water Sign. This is another one that I just could not get enough of. It was really my intro to more funk-oriented music, and it was really focused on the Fender Rhodes. I don't know, there's something that happens when you hear funk music for the first time, or something that has a groove like this. It just gets up in you, and that album did that for me. It literally changed my life. I'd never heard bass played like that before, or guitar heard like that, and I'd never heard the Fender Rhodes highlighted like this. So it was a little more of an organic type of sound because it was released in 1979. It was, this is an earlier album. But it had kind of the sophistication of Chick, but a little more like earthy. And I can pretty much sing all of Jeff Lorber's solos on this album. And a quick fun fact about this one, the tune Rain Dance on this album has been sampled by a vast amount of hip-hop artists and just pop and R&B artists. So this is tune 88. Let's check this out. Guitar. Woo! Feels good, right? Okay, we're right around my sophomore year in high school now. Right around 1989. And back then, there was a thing called Columbia House records and CDs where you could pay 1 penny and they'd send you 15 CDs, which seemed like an amazing deal. But really, they scammed you because then you had to pay for pretty expensive albums. But I did get a bunch of records or CDs from this. And one of them was the Chick Corea Acoustic Band. Now, the acoustic band was really only formed because the electric band was in such high demand at this time. I mean, the electric band was hot. So Chick formed the acoustic band. Chick, John Patitucci, and Dave Weckl. I didn't know what to expect. The album cover was really cool. It had them on this very white, stark background, and then just their instruments. They looked very classy. And I didn't know what to make of it. And when I put it on, I didn't really latch onto it at first, but I kept listening because I loved Chick's playing so much. And it really was my introduction to acoustic jazz. Chick still had great writing, even though it was acoustic, and I started to really appreciate and love the sound of how the piano and the upright bass and the drum sound. So this really was a watershed album for me because it introduced me to acoustic music. Let's check it out. Great writing right there. So crisp. Okay, so right around my junior year, I was listening to 88.9 in Milwaukee. Supposed to be doing my homework, but I was listening to the radio. And this recording came on of Miles Davis Quintet live at Carnegie Hall. I've never heard anything like that before. It blew me away. The sound of the album, the reverb of the hall, Miles, just the whole thing. I was just like transfixed. And I started to realize something very important about this music through this album, that there are main tributary artists, someone like Miles or someone like John Coltrane or Art Blakey, and then all of these other musicians come from that main tributary. And I had learned, I forget where I read it, but I had never understood or realized that Chick Corea played with Miles Davis. And I started like thinking about, there's like all this other stuff back in the past that I had no idea about. I'm a kid, I don't know. So one of the other Columbia House records that I got, because I think I did Columbia House twice or 3 times because I wanted the free CDs, was Miles Davis Milestones. This record really changed a lot for me, and it just started a Miles Davis obsession. And I think for a lot of musicians, Miles was another way to really get into this music, because so many other musicians played for him and played with him and went on to have careers of their own. Because a lot of the people left on this list are from the tributary of Miles. So this is Milestones, and this is the tune Dr. Jekyll. I think it was originally titled Dr. Jekyll and then Dr. Jackal later on, but it's Dr. Jekyll, and this is just killing. This is a blues. 4 chord. 1. The sound. Cannonball. I've never heard anything like this before. Coltrane. Cannonball. Coltrane. Number 5, this is the one for me. This is the one that turned the corner, and it went from loving to listening to it to wanting to learn how to play it. This is the album that changed it for me. It's Miles Davis, The Complete Concert. This was recorded in 1964. It was actually a benefit concert for 3 African American organizations. There's a backstory about this, because Miles agreed to do the concert for free, but he didn't tell anybody in the band. So there was an energy between the band when they did this, and it was also being recorded for Columbia Records. So high stakes. It's recorded February 12th, 1964. It features Miles Davis on trumpet, George Coleman on tenor saxophone, and a young Herbie Hancock on piano, Ron Carter, and Tony Williams. Now, I had heard of Herbie Hancock because of his tune Rocket, because it was on MTV when I was a kid. Then I was like, he played piano. And this is really the album where I understood the history of a lot of these other musicians that went on to do their own things. This record is actually a compilation of 2 albums that came out on Columbia. The CD companies and the record companies, when CDs came out, they would make twofers, or they'd combine things together to make them into one thing, or a double CD. So this is called the complete concert, but it's made up of 2 albums that were released separately. One was called My Funny Valentine, which was the ballad and slower tunes from this record, and then 4 and More, which were the up-tempo tunes. So this is My Funny Valentine, Miles, George Coleman, Herbie, Ron, and Tony. Check it out. It's the dynamics. Had to get a little Herbie in here. I just had never heard chords like this before. Duple triplets. Diminished. Pretty much the rest of these are all senior year in high school, because that's really when the floodgates opened. I couldn't get enough of this music. And in high school, first period, our great choir director, Randy Swigum, hi Randy, a few of us would do study hall first period in his choir room. And he had a great stereo, so we would listen to records, well, CDs, but you know, records, CDs, same thing at that point. Okay, vinyl people, don't freak out. I know they're not the same thing. Anyways, I digress. This one really was a huge influence on me all throughout high school and college, because it's Herbie Hancock, who now I knew was a pianist and had this whole body of work right around the time playing with Miles Davis in the 60s. So this is his classic album, Maiden, Voyage, released May 17, 1965. It features Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, who I had never heard before, George Coleman again on tenor saxophone, and then Herbie, Ron Carter, and Tony Williams. This is another example of you start listening to one artist, and then I found out about Freddie Hubbard, and then I realized Freddie Hubbard had all these records. You start to see like, oh, there's this, like I said, it's a tributary, and it's a tree. So this is his classic tune, Dolphin Dance, and this one's just beautiful. God, that sound still gets up in my body. Okay, we're still in senior year, and this is when I first learned about Bill Evans. I read Miles's autobiography, and I learned so much about other musicians through that autobiography. I learned that he played with Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. I learned about Monk. I learned about Bud Powell. So many musicians, and I also learned about Bill Evans. I had listened to Kinda Blue by this point. Then I realized, Bill around this time was starting his own career. So he formed a trio with Scott LaFaro on bass and Paul Motian on drums. I guess it's pronounced Motian, but he just went with Motion after so many years because that's what everybody would say. So even he started calling himself Paul Motion. But I'm pretty sure his original pronunciation is Paul Motian. That was the trio. And if you know that trio, the history is it's a very interactive trio. It wasn't two guys accompanying Bill. It was a conversation between three musicians. And this really blew my mind hearing this. I'd never heard people play music like this before. So this is his version of Witchcraft. Listen to the bass. Those block chords. Having a conversation. There was a rhythmic complexity about this that really drew me in. And something about this album that I also wanted to say is when you listen to it, the recording of it is so great because it sounds like you're literally in the room with them. Like it sounds like they're just surrounding you. It's just incredible. There's an immediacy about the sound of that album that really, really got to me. Number 8, this is a big one. This is my introduction to John Coltrane outside of Miles Davis. This is John Coltrane, Blue Train. Recorded September 15th, 1957. Train on saxophone, Lee Morgan, so burning on this record. Lee Morgan on trumpet, Curtis Fuller on trombone, Kenny Drew on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, Philly Joe Jones on drums. I mean, that is a vibe. That is a vibe. Nice harmony. Train. In May 1992, I was winding down high school, and I was just so deep in this music at this point. I was subscribing to Downbeat magazine, and I just couldn't get enough. And an issue came out of Downbeat magazine called The Young Lions, and it was all about these young musicians who were coming up in the jazz world, which was important for me because at this point I had really been, it had been the Miles tributary. It had been Herbie and Coltrane, and I had learned about Charlie Parker and you know, the classic musicians who I still listen to today. But then I learned about all these other musicians that were closer to my age in a way, even though they were older, but they were young musicians. And these were musicians like Benny Green on piano, Christian McBride on bass, Roy Hargrove on trumpet, Carl Allen on drums, who I learned was from Milwaukee, and many more, but I'm just singling those guys out for a reason. And I realized that there was a whole nother area of this music to explore. So I really got learning about Benny Green. And through him, I learned about Oscar Peterson. I learned about Cedar Walton. I learned about George Cables and Walter Bishop. So he's another example of his tributary where I realized, oh, now there's all these other piano players to check out who aren't Herbie or Chick. Different styles of playing. So this album is called Testifyn, Live at the Village Vanguard. This album, if this would have been a vinyl album, I would have worn it out. I played it so much. So check this out. You got that from Oscar? So much joy in this. Thank you. Thank you, Benny. All right, number 10. This is right around summertime after my senior year. I would go out and see musicians at this point. I'd gotten to know the piano players in town. And I would go see this pianist, Melvin Ryan, at I think it was at the Hyatt. Just during the week, he played a solo piano gig. And I would love going there. And I was listening to the radio, 88.9 again, and a Wes Montgomery album came on. And the DJ said that was Milwaukee's own Melvin Ryan on organ. I was like, whoa, that's the guy that I see at the Hyatt. So I went out and bought that album. It's called Guitar on the Go. I was just blown away by a few things on this record. Wes Montgomery was the first jazz guitarist I ever heard. And I just loved that. I loved the sound. I loved how clean it was. But then I had never heard organ in this context before. I'd only heard like rock organ. Melvin's sound that he got out of the organ was like hypnotizing for me. It was incredible. So this record was real important for me because it was really my introduction to organ and guitar. So this is The Way You Look Tonight, taken from Guitar on the Go. I think this is the second A. Yeah, bridge. Melvin. I hope you dug this. It was fun to put together. Maybe you discovered some new folks. Maybe you got to relive some things you haven't heard in a while, but I hope you enjoyed it. If I were to offer any tips for like cultivating a deeper listening practice, I would start with the bigger names. Start with Miles, start with Coltrane, Charlie Parker. Check out Art Blakey or Horace Silver or Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, because through these musicians, you'll learn about so many other musicians. But pay attention to who plays on these albums. Don't just focus on the main person. Every person on these albums has their own tributary. This is where you'll learn the lineage of who has been playing in the music. Okay? I would also pay attention to the record labels because those tell a story too. Blue Note, Riverside, Prestige, Columbia, just to name a few. Verve, Atlantic, they all have their own jazz story. So pay attention to that stuff. All right, have a good one. We'll see you soon. Thanks for checking this out.